All right, so it has been quite a week at Manchester United. Jose Mourinho is gone. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is in as interim manager till the end of the season. With Maurizio Pochettino, it seems very much the man United want to take the job on a permanent basis during the summer. John Giles is on the line to discuss it all. Afternoon, John.
Afternoon, Nathan.
So when you look at what's gone on at Manchester United, and you had predicted, I think, that Jose Mourinho wouldn't last until the end of the season, were you surprised that it all came about so quickly in the end?
Well, I think everybody's surprised when it happens, Nathan. You know, I think it was inevitable, but it certainly happened quicker than I expected it to. But that's always the case, you know.
Do you think after the performance against Liverpool, was there something in that performance, aside from just losing the game, that made up the mind of Ed Woodward and the Manchester United board?
I have a feeling, Nathan, that they'd made a decision before the weekend, and having seen the performance against Liverpool, it finally decided to do it there and then. But I think they had made up their mind because, you know, you got the thing with Solskjaer now. It happened very, very quickly, and they had it in place very quickly, which means there was some planning beforehand. I think they felt the departure is inevitable, but with the Liverpool performance, I think it pushed them forward a little bit to get the job done.
There was always a feeling with Mourinho that the third year was going to be the most important because it's unravelled at so many clubs from in that third season. The difference here is that he never had the real bounce of the first couple of years, the initial impact. I know they won a League Cup and they won the Europa League, but they didn't really get close to winning a title despite finishing second last season. What do you think's gone wrong with Mourinho over the last couple of years that he couldn't make a success of this job?
First of all, Nathan, I think you're right about the 3-year thing. We know that. But the difference with the other clubs in the 3 years, now he actually won trophies. I know you mentioned it just there, but he won big trophies at Chelsea in his first year. Then in Madrid he won, like in Manchester United he won 2 trophies, but they wouldn't be considered major trophies, to be quite honest. The Europa Cup and the League Cup, they are trophies, but they're not the major trophies that he'd won in previous clubs. So, and what I'm saying here, and I think he got off to good starts in the other clubs that he was in. He never got off to a really good start at Manchester United. So that has been the big difference. So he had no credit in the bank coming into this particular season. And I find with Mourinho, if you look back on his career, when he goes to the clubs, first of all, Nathan, he's almost immediately successful. You know, his first year at Chelsea, when he first went, he won the league in that first year. So everything went his way in those particular early months. It's when things go against him, Nathan, that he becomes a bad manager. Now, he becomes a great manager when things are going his way, but when things go against him, like they did at Manchester United, he hits out. I mean, I made out a list last week of people.
That he's fallen out with.
Sorry, Nathan. There's somebody at the door.
No bother at all, John.
Sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, no bother at all.
Hang on.
So we'll be back to John in just a minute to talk a little bit more, I think, about Jose Mourinho. You can get your comments in, by the way, if you're watching on all our social channels. It is coming up to Christmas. Leave a comment there in behind, and we will get it to John between now and the end of the show. Very shortly. As I say, he's going to be with us again Thursday night. We actually have a lot of live football between now and then on Off the Ball. Sunday, we're going to have Everton against Spurs. Myself and Brian Kerr are going to be at Goodison for that, the last game before Christmas. And also then on Stephen's Day, we have 2 live games. Fulham against Wolves is at 12:30, and then Liverpool against Newcastle from 3:00. And then the following Sunday again, we'll have 2 more live matches before we round off the Christmas period with the biggest game of the season, which will be Manchester City against Liverpool, live from the Etihad Stadium. Myself, Johnny Walters and Kevin Kilban will be at that one. So you won't miss a thing in obviously what is the busiest period of the entire football season. Any thoughts on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer coming in as the Manchester United manager? Do let us know. Get your comments in and we will try and put them to John before we wrap up on this. John is back with us. John, you were just saying that I think you were putting together a list of people that Jose Mourinho had fallen out with. I'd imagine it'd be quite a long list.
The point I was making, Nathan, when he went to other clubs with Frank Lampard at Chelsea and that, he'd really, really good pros, really good lads, and they took to him straight away and he took to them. So it's in other words, get on with it. And he obviously is a great coach. I think when he came to Manchester United with the Pogba situation and a few others, I made a load of list of players the other day. The amount of players he fell out with, Nathan, Pogba starting off, Smalling, Jones, Lukaku, Rashford, loads, like at least 9 players you thought, and humiliating them publicly. I mean, one thing about Ferguson, he gave them the hairdryer, as we know, but he never fell out with them publicly, never criticised them publicly. Mourinho did that, and it's very, very hard then to get the players back. And when they're led by Pogba, which led that group, I think, he's no chance of succeeding.
Is he very unusual then in the way that he seems to leave clubs? Because you always get the sense with the vast majority of managers, they want to stay as long as possible. They want to make a success of it, even when things look as though they're beyond repair. They're still trying to make things better. Whereas Mourinho, it feels as though he just adds fuel to the fire constantly, that once it starts to unravel, he doesn't really have it in him to try and drag it back.
No. I don't think he's able to do it, Nathan. I think he's a great coach when things are going his way, and he makes them go his way. But when things go against him, it can't be his fault. Nothing can be his fault. Like Luke Shaw, for example, there a couple of years ago, totally humiliated him after the match, and he got Watford. And it had to be his fault. In other words, it's nothing to do with me. When we win, it's everything to do with me. When we lose, it's nothing to do with me. So he hits out at them, and he hits out publicly. I think he's not a very secure guy, to be quite honest, individual, Nathan. He has to hit out. He can't be wrong all the time. And then he antagonises players. I mean, apparently the players at Old Trafford were celebrating on Monday when they went in, because there's none of them. Martial, he humiliated everybody. And they were all glad to get rid of him. So, yeah, there's a way of criticising players, Nathan, but you certainly don't. I've never seen it work when a manager criticises players and humiliates them publicly.
On the players' side of it then, you look at the performance against Liverpool, they were outrun, they were outthought, they were just completely dominated, and the 19 points that between the two teams played out on the pitch as well, really, over the 90 minutes. Do they have to take a certain degree of responsibility as well when you look at the talent that's available at Manchester United?
Yeah, of course, players always have to take responsibility, Nathan. But, I've been in dressing rooms and where the morale was low and the morale was good. But how do you define morale? It usually starts with the manager treating the players the right way, the players having respect for them. That's it. And it's very, very hard to describe the lack of morale in the Manchester United dressing room. I mean, why would the players, or most of the players, be celebrating when he's gone? It's the manager guides everything in a football, should be guiding everything in a football club. In other words, relating to the players. I mean, if you go, but at the moment now, there's a lot of talk about Pochettino. I mean, he's got a limited amount of money to spend. But look at the spirit that you can see in that club. And some of those players are not as well paid as they should be. There's been controversy about that. But he gets that from the players. In other words, he treats them properly. They've got respect for him. He's got respect for them. And then you have the morale in the dressing room. And morale in the dressing room is very, very fragile, Nathan. I've been in dressing room where it's been very, very good. My time at Leeds United, when Brian Clough came in, within 44 days, the morale was gone. And we were the same players. We just won the league championship. So it's very, very hard to define it. So when Mourinho did what he did, first of all, at Chelsea with Lampard and John Terry and all these guys, obviously the morale was good. Then he fell out with the owner. He fell out somewhere along the way, and the morale goes very, very quickly. And I think there was no morale left in the Manchester United dressing room by the time he went during last week. And that explains in many ways what happened at Liverpool, their display at Liverpool. It didn't happen overnight, Nathan,
So do you then, when you look at, as you say, the morale, do people underestimate the importance of a manager on that dressing room? I'm thinking of some of the comments of last weekend, say from Roy Keane when he was talking about Jesse Lingard launching a clothing range, and he spoke about in a strong dressing room that wouldn't happen, that basically you'd have strong enough characters that would keep everybody under control. Are they underestimating, though, that actually the morale, the character, all of that comes from the very top, all of that comes from the manager?
Yes, it comes from the manager, Nathan. There's no doubt. Ferguson was a very, very strong manager. Roy Keane was a very, very important player for him. And, Roy Keane is saying, well, the players wouldn't stand for that. Ferguson wouldn't have stood for it. So the players in Manchester United, the players wouldn't have to object at all. It just wouldn't happen. And that's where the manager leads. That's where the great managers are. And that's what they do. You know, I played under Matt Busby at Manchester United. Very, very gentlemanly man, but totally tough, really tough. Wouldn't let any nonsense happen, Nathan, at all. Don Revie was the same. At Leeds, I was very lucky. I played under two great managers. And he wouldn't have the players. Of course, the players would contribute. But what he would do, first of all, is get the right characters in the team that wouldn't do what Lingard did. And if they did, he would stop it before it even started. So it all comes back to the manager. The manager sets the tone, and he does whatever needs to be done in those situations.
Part of the conversation over the last couple of days, again, a lot of it maybe out of that Liverpool performance as well, is a manager coming in to get back to the Manchester United way, that Mourinho going to Anfield, having 30% possession, starting with a midfield of Matic and Herrera, no real intention to keep control of the ball, to go on the front foot, that's not the Manchester United way. Like, is there a Manchester United way? When you think back to being at the club, was there a way that they believed football should have been played? Or is there just maybe an Alex Ferguson way that has somehow been brought into as the Manchester United way?
I don't believe in the Manchester United way, Nathan, to be quite honest. When Ferguson came there, Ferguson was a great manager in his own right. They had 2 or 3 managers before that who didn't really do the job. Ferguson got first 3 years, didn't look like he was going to be able to do it, and then picked it up from there. He got the foundations right to do what he did, and over a period of time, he got great players in, Nathan, and what they did have at Manchester United under Ferguson and Busby was a winning way. Now, as it happened, they had very, very attractive players who could do it. But when Chelsea were winning things when Mourinho first went, there was no complaints about the way he played, Nathan, because they were winning. And he was winning I think he's a great coach. I think what happened at Manchester United hasn't worked for him as it has worked in other places. But I don't really, of course there is a Manchester United way, because it's been a very successful team over the years, and they had great players. He didn't have great players in the squad, and the ones that he did have, he fell out with anyway. So it's a big story. I think the whole thing started with Pogba, to be honest. He never got a grip of Pogba. And whether he signed him or not, or if he signed him, I would be doubtful, very doubtful, that he actually signed Pogba.
Yeah.
See, there's one thing about Mourinho. Mourinho is a real pro. He's a great coach, and I think his way of managing most of the time is very good, managing a team like Chelsea and Inter Milan and the Portuguese team he had. He's no mug when it comes to managing teams. And what he insists on is that honesty of effort on the pitch is your starting point. I think Woodward at the time had failed to bring players into Manchester United. And I think the Pogba situation was a big signing for his sake, Nathan. All right, he paid 90 million, and the story was that he beat Barcelona and Real Madrid for his signature. I don't think those clubs were in for him. Mourinho was going into the job, and I'm only giving you my take on it now, that I think he wanted Mourinho, and Mourinho did go along with him with Pogba, because I remember at the time Mourinho described Pogba as the complete midfield player. Yeah. Now, Pogba has never been the complete midfield player, and I'd be amazed if Mourinho really believed that, Nathan. So I think it's been a struggle from the start. Pogba is what he is, which is totally against, I believe, all the things that Mourinho believes in a club and discipline.
So Pogba was one of those that the reports were coming out was celebrating, handing out high fives in the dressing room.
Definitely.
Was heard shouting, he thought he could make a fool of me and turn the fans against me. He effed with the wrong baller. Was the line from Paul Pogba.
No doubt.
But
times have changed, Nathan. There's no doubt. Pogba is a social media star. And that's what he is. He's not. He's a great social media man. I don't think he's a great player. He's a talented player, but he's nowhere near being the great player that he thinks himself to be. And I think there's no doubt from the start it was a battle between Mourinho and Pogba. And Mourinho didn't handle it well, Nathan. There's no doubt about that. He didn't handle it well, but I think it was always going to be a battle. Mourinho has his ways of, this is the way a team should work, this is the way players behave. Pogba doesn't. Pogba has another take on that altogether, which is does his hairdo and does the social media stuff and all the various things. Talented, but a great player, never in a million years. And that's what rubbed Pogba Mourinho up the wrong way. And he fell out with him really, really big time, but he handled that badly as well. Mourinho did.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is part of modern management not dealing with these extremely rich young men who more and more have social media presences, or like Jesse Lingard, or setting up their own clothing companies, that they have very much another life away from football that they like to indulge in? Is part of being a modern manager, which Jose Mourinho likes to see himself as, is that not part of the deal, that you have to cope with those players to figure out a way of getting the best out of them?
Well, the first thing with that in Mourinho's case and his principles, I don't think he would have ever brought Pogba or people like Pogba into the club in the first place. Right. See, if you go back to Ferguson had to deal with it. Ferguson had to make big changes from the time he came from, big time. You know, Ferguson, I played against Ferguson, the same age as him. And Ferguson came from a time where there was no freedom of contract and all the various things. And when he took over Manchester United, there was no freedom of contract, where the players were earning the really, really big money. But he still controlled them. But because he wouldn't stand, and he had the authority not to stand for anybody that wasn't doing what they should be doing. He would never have signed Pogba, ever. Alex Ferguson, and he controlled those guys. I mean, Roy Keane was a great player, but Roy Keane had I would say a very would be in many ways a difficult guy to manage. But he managed him. He got the best out of him, but he managed him. You didn't see Keane doing outrageous things. Well, he did in certain ways, but it was usually for the benefit of the team.
Yeah,
you know, he had Scholes and all these guys and all the players he brought in. And there was never any public criticism of the players from Ferguson, but he dealt with them in his own way, and he got the respect of those particular players. So I think in certainly in Lingard's case, who was a youngish guy, they do have licenses, no doubt, Nathan, to do things that they wouldn't have been allowed to do years ago. But I think Pogba's case is totally an exceptional case in what he does and what he believes in and how he thinks that his behaviour is acceptable. That's why I don't ever believe, will never believe, that Mourinho actually brought him into the club.
You said earlier that you think Mourinho is a great coach, and when you do look back over his career, listen, he has the trophies to justify that, and you couldn't but admire the way Inter Milan went and won the Champions League, or even that Chelsea team at the start, defensively how strong they were, and attacking at times with Duff and Robin. They were brilliant to watch as well. Yeah. All that's starting to feel like a long time ago. Like, when you look at him on the basis of the last 2.5 seasons, do you still think he's a great coach, and do you think we will see a great Jose Mourinho again somewhere?
Well, it depends where he goes and what the situation is, Nathan. You know, like he hasn't been good at Manchester United, but you have to start with Pogba and the situation with Pogba, which has been hugely instrumental in Mourinho not doing well at Old Trafford, and also the way he managed after he wasn't doing well. That's why he's a 3-year man. You know, he fell out with players at Chelsea as well, who had won the league from the previous year. He fell out with the club doctor. Do you remember all that carry on? I think he's a great football coach. I don't think he's a great man manager at all, Nathan. But I think the way his teams played, you go back to Chelsea, and they played brilliant stuff. They weren't as attractive as Manchester United at the best, but they were very, very good with the players that he had. Yeah, I mean, I thought as a coach, he was brilliant. What he believed in is when we have the ball, we use it as well as we can. When we haven't got it, we're going to defend. And therefore, he is known as a defensive coach. And one of the reasons for that is that when his teams were well organised, like Chelsea were at their best, they defended longer than anybody else because they wouldn't let a team score, Nathan. Like you get Arsenal over the last couple of years under Wenger. Every time somebody attacked them, they scored. So they weren't defending. So they weren't known as a defensive team. But Mourinho at Chelsea, particularly, they attacked as well as anybody else. They scored as many goals as anybody else. I think the Manchester United situation, like every club you go into is a different situation. And starting from the start, I think he sold his soul a little bit with Woodward on the Pogba situation at that time, Nathan.
So Manchester United have appointed Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as caretaker manager until the summer, and then they will go and get a full-time permanent manager to lead them into the future. What do you make of that arrangement?
Well, it doesn't sound to me as great. I don't know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I know him as a player. But, his spell at Cardiff was a total disaster, Nathan.
Yeah.
Total disaster. He had 5 wins in 25 matches. He brought Cardiff down. They were near the bottom of the championship when he left. It was a total disaster. So what he's done since, I don't know, because this is a very, very important time for Manchester United, because they're still in the Champions League. They want to get into the top 4 to get in the Champions League again next year. I would have thought they'd have there must be a more experienced manager out there who would do the job until the end of the season, rather than Solskjaer. Because I don't know. It's a very, very important time for Manchester United. They can talk about the end of the season, but it's a long time till the end of this season, and there's a lot to play for, Nathan. I mean, I'm sure he's a very approachable lad, and they brought Phelan back in as well. Yeah.
Well, you look at what Solskjaer's done. So he was in charge of Molde in his first spell, won a couple of league titles, as you say, then goes to Cardiff City, and it's a complete disaster. Everything you hear is he feels as though he learnt a lot from that. He's gone back to Molde, hasn't managed to win a title, but seems to have done reasonably well. But as you say, for a club of the stature of Manchester United, it's maybe not the experienced head you would have expected. It feels as though, in a way, it goes back to that term, the Manchester United way, that they want this connection with the past, which feels almost like, say, Liverpool when they appointed Roy Evans, and keeping the boot room connection, and that's what would keep the club striving forward, is by looking back. Like, would you worry with Manchester United in a move like this that they're not acting in a very modern football club way, that they're still almost harking back to the era of Ferguson when really they need to move on?
Yeah, I don't think it's modern. I don't think it makes sense, Nathan. When you say about Liverpool, like, all those guys were part of the winning setup. They succeeded winning managers, and that worked for a long time, as you know, for Liverpool. I mean, this guy hasn't been at the club for whenever he left 4 or 5 years ago or more. And to be quite honest, when he played, he never struck me as one of the leading characters in the team. Now that's the way he played. I mean, you could tell straight away. Keane has that character about him, and Gary Neville and Sergio Ferris. But I never saw that in Solskjaer. Now, that might be unfair on him, because I don't know him in a private way and what he's doing in the club. But I feel that from Manchester United's point of view, I think they should have gone for a more experienced manager and forget about the connection with the past. The past is past. Solskjaer's gone. Phelan's come back. They were all part of a different situation altogether. It's 5 years since Ferguson left. 5 years, Nathan. And they were part of that at that particular time. I'm only my opinion. I don't think it's a good appointment for them.
Yeah, like caretaker managers come in all the time.
Pogba, for example.
Well, that's, I guess, one of the challenges that he's going to have to face.
I think Pogba you'll see more and more and more and more of Pogba now,
right,
Nathan, than ever before, because that's what he is. He's got a head about himself, a huge head about himself, and I think he will. I think he will dominate. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't dominate the situation there.
Yeah, and I guess from Solskjaer's point of view, that's a difficult thing to manage, because if you were coming in on a permanent basis, if it was an experienced head, you can take an approach to Paul Pogba, and maybe you can have the conversation with Ed Woodward as to how you do manage him, and you can discipline him if you needs be, and you can somehow try and drag him into line. But if you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Paul Pogba's seen as the club's biggest asset, do you have the power to go into that dressing room and even try and control him?
Well, I think he might try, but I don't think he'll succeed. I think Pogba is what he is, Nathan. I'll tell you, if I were a manager, it's only a big if I were a manager. The first thing I do when I go is get rid of Pogba.
Right.
I get him out.
You didn't see enough, say, with France last summer to suggest that the right manager who understands him, who gets his mentality, can actually get him to play consistently good football?
No, I don't believe in that either, Nathan. I mean, great players. I mean, you go back over the great players in the past. Bobby Charlton was one of the great players at Manchester United, right? Best ever player, in my opinion, for Manchester United. Bobby didn't have that mentality. Of course, he had Busby there, but Bobby wasn't there to dominate and to beyond do all the things that Pogba does. I know Pogba's a modern player, as I said, with the social media and all that. There wasn't there in Bobby Charlton's day. But look at all the great players. Look at Messi at Barcelona. you had Messi and a few other great players over the years at Barcelona. They don't try to do what Pogba's done. Ronaldo didn't try to do what Pogba did. Ronaldo had his own way of going, and he was a very dominant character. But when he got on the pitch, Nathan, he was a pro.
Yeah.
Nobody could ever accuse Ronaldo of not doing his best when he went on the pitch, ever. And he was the biggest name, and he probably would have been the most awkward one to manage in many ways, in my opinion. But Ferguson did it brilliantly. So did Zidane, and whoever was managed him. He wouldn't be. He'd be a difficult character, I think, Ronaldo. But he went on the pitch and did it.
Yeah.
Pogba didn't do that. Pogba went on the pitch and he does tricks. He does a few, and he's a talented guy, all right. There's no doubt about that. And I think the mistake they made at Manchester United, whether it be Woodward or anybody else, when he was at Juventus, I think he had his best years at Juventus, Nathan, and he played left side of midfield with Pirlo in the middle. Pirlo was one of the best midfield players ever. So Pirlo could control the game and get the ball to Pogba, and Pogba could do whatever he was good at in that particular position. When they bought him at Old Trafford, he came as a Pirlo. He can't do that. Now, I think Mourinho recognised that early on. I think he handled it badly, but Woodward bought him for his own reasons. And Mourinho did say he's the complete midfield player. I don't think Mourinho ever believed that, ever. But he was going along with what Woodward wanted. And that's why I say, in many ways, he sold his soul in that particular way. He could never get the best out of him playing in the position that he was supposed to be playing in, ever, because he's not able to do it.
Yeah,
he thinks he can do it. Pogba thinks he can do it, but there's a difference between what he thinks and what he actually does. So it's a very complex situation in many ways, Nathan. But when Mourinho did what he did, which was to insult Woodward and humiliate Pogba, that was 2 against 1. And he had no chance in that situation, ultimately.
It's probably going to be a long 6-7 months before Manchester United officially appoint a full-time manager, but all the speculation already is around Maurizio Pochettino, and that United would be willing to spend the 35-40 million that it might take to get Spurs to release him.
Money. That would be pain. I would go for Pochettino as well. I think he's done a really top-class job at Spurs with limited resources in relation to what he could have at Manchester United. But I think he's been very, very good the way the team plays with Harry Kane and Dele Alli and all the players that he has. I think he's been terrific. And I think he would do brilliantly at Manchester United. So even if they had to pay 50 million, Nathan,
it'd be worth it.
If you get a successful manager, it'd finish up peanuts.
Yeah,
peanuts.
Exactly. There was a press conference earlier today with Maurizio Pochettino where he was basically was been asked about Manchester United, but wasn't allowed to talk. His press officer came in and said, "I'm sick of talking about this. We're not going to allow any questions." You do wonder what sort of effect this may have on Spurs if every single press conference, as I think it's going to be, there are questions about the links to Manchester United. And Pochettino, at the first opportunity, didn't come out and say, "No, I'm not interested." He said, "There's always going to be these sort of rumours."
Yeah.
Do you feel this could be quite destabilising for Spurs for the rest of the season?
Well, I think he has an unbelievable relationship with the players, Nathan Pochettino. Because these players, a lot of them, Harry Kane and Dele Alli, were being very, very much underpaid at the club. But they believed in him, and he gets on well with them, and he teaches them well, and he manages them well. I've never heard him say a bad word publicly about any of the players. Have you?
No.
Never. And he's one of them. He's one of the players. He's in with them. He does his best for them. He never criticises them publicly or anything. I think he's done a really, really top-class job. And, of course, in the position he's in, he can't say, "I'm interested in Manchester United."
Yeah.
He obviously will be interested in Manchester United, but he can't say it, and he's just signed a new contract. So all he can say is, "Look, I'm going to do the best I can with these players." And it has been put off till the end of the season. And players as I know them, Nathan, till the end of the season for them is enough.
Right.
Now it's now what matters, and he's going to be there at the end of the season. Okay, at the end of the season, it's a different proposition altogether from the player's point of view. But I think he's got them on side, and I think they will play for him until the end of the season. And if Manchester United come in and offer the right money, then he could even leave. I'd say he could leave, and Manchester United have to pay up whatever needs to be paid up. But that's another day's work. But I think as far as the players are concerned, I think he's been with them for the last 2 or 3 years, and I think he gets on great with them. He gets the best out of them. I think they like him, they respect him, and I think the feeling is mutual there. So that's why he's done such a great job. But I think at the moment, obviously what he has to say is, I'm doing the job for Spurs, and that's it. And I think every press conference he goes to, I think it'll start off with that, Nathan. Sorry, I can't talk about it. I'm managing Spurs, that's the end of it. So I think he's handled it well, and I think he's handled most things well, Pochettino. I think he would be a very, very good fit for Manchester United.
All right, John, great stuff as always. Enjoy the Christmas.
And you, Nathan, and all the listeners, if I don't speak to them before, thanks for listening in, and we'll speak to you again.
Yeah,
thanks,
we'll talk to you next week, John.
Thank you.